Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm week. Oh, jumping now.
Bloody hell, we're
There's a chance here, a great save. A turner from McClare. Mike Conley. A terrific goal by Sheridan.
Rexman against Jones. Get in.
You could have two goalkeepers in there that would have trouble saving that.
Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome to the Wednesday. Whenever. My name's Lauren, and with me on the line, first of all, today we've got Monsieur the Fudge. Hello there, Fudge, old boy.
Ahoy, chaps. How's it going? You all right? I thought
Thank you very much.
I was just getting a bit of phlegm up there. It's been that long. I was blowing the dust off the back of my throat. Do you know what I mean?
And of course, on the line as well, you heard him chuckling in the background there. We have Monsieur the Beast. Hello there, Beastie, old chap.
How do? I thought it were a Yorkshire meeting. I thought that's what we did first thing in the morning. Cough half a stun of phlegm up and then you're ready for day.
It sounds like the opening of a meeting at Sunnyside Working Men's Club down at that street, Rotherham, doesn't it? Right, let's call this meeting to order.
And of course, our little foursome wouldn't be complete without Mr. Hoyland. Hello there, the old boy. How are you, old chap?
Hello, your lordship. I tell you what, we're not rusty at all, are we? It's not like we've been away for a few weeks. It's brilliant, this.
Well, Eddie, by the sounds of it, you've got a lot more time on your hands, haven't you?
No, you
I've got it early.
Yes, ladies and gents, we would like to apologise for our absence over the last few weeks, but to be frank, it's been more or less the same story. So we would have come on, we would have said one all and jolly good. We were hard done by and cracked on. But again, to save you having the Wednesday wine for the last few weeks, we're back and we're all positive and wonderful all over again. So then, chaps, let's start off. When we really started to sort of wane off a little bit was sort of, and I know this has all been gone through on Twitter and forums and all the rest of it, but we haven't really heard your chaps' views on the Medine situation. Now, obviously, at the last time I was recording, everything was still up in the air, and there was lots of alleged and things that we couldn't say in case we got in trouble, because there's always somebody looking to take our millions from us. But chaps, I mean, looking at the Medine situation, obviously he's no longer available to play, shall we say? So I was
No,
just
he's
wondering.
definitely on bench now, isn't he?
He's still getting ahead of Maguire, mate.
So just wondering what you chaps thought about the whole thing. Beastie, fire away, old boy.
Well, I know it's, as you've said, it's been quite a while since it all happened, and I've had quite a few arguments and disagreements with people online because it does get quite heated, and there tends to be a little bit of a age divide. I think the younger fans tend to side with Medine, and the older ones tend to stand back and say, "Well, you can't behave like that." And I'm afraid I am firmly in that older end. I am.
I must be an old chap as well.
Absolutely, I am an old git, and as far as I'm concerned, you cannot be. I don't care what your job is, right? The fact that he's a professional footballer is neither here nor there, right? But you cannot go around. You cannot act how he acted. I know there's a lot of provocation, and I know that when he goes out, people always want to have a pop at him. But it's up to him to try and get himself out of those situations, or not put himself in them in the first place. And as far as I'm concerned, if you behave like that with anybody, the fact that he's a blade is neither here nor there, right? If you act like that with anybody, then you're going to find yourself in trouble. And I've said it for quite a while now, not just with Medine, but with other players. I'm sick to death of thugs being employed by football clubs. Not just here, thugs and people who don't know how to conduct themselves, like Marlon King, like Lee Hughes, all that sort of. I'm not putting them in the same bracket as Gary Medine, but for me, the football clubs need to draw a line at stand and say, look, we're not putting up with this. I'm not having any more footballers that don't know how to conduct themselves on or off the pitch. We all have kids, apart from Fudge, who's never ever going to have any kids because he's not going to be allowed. Those of us that have got kids, we take them to football and we say, look, these are our heroes. We want them to be yours. And when they behave themselves like that, then it throws all that out at water, doesn't it? You don't want your kids to be looking up to people like that, and that's how I see it. I'm sorry if anybody else disagrees. That's fine. You're entitled to be wrong, but that's how it is. That's how it is from my point of view, anyway.
You know what, BC? I couldn't agree more with the sentiment that you put forward there. As a father, Gary Medine was my son's 6 now, and Gary Medine was his first Wednesday hero. Probably the first song you learned, even before Hickory Dickory Dock and Incy Wincy Spider, was Gary Medine Goal Machine. In fact, the first joke he ever told was re-singing that song as Gary Medine Washing Machine. So he's been emotionally invested in Gary Medine.
Why on earth have we not got this comedy genius?
Yeah, sign him up.
He should be writing for the show, I've got to say. And I've had to sit down. It's been uncomfortable for me. He's got over it, to be fair, but it's been uncomfortable for me sitting down and saying, Gary Medine is no longer a Sheffield Wednesday player. Why is he no longer a Sheffield Wednesday player? Because he's actually not a very nice person. And this, I suppose, you've touched on it, basically. It's a problem in football, isn't it? That you've got an industry that will forgive and turn a blind eye to any manner of personal failing as long as you can deliver on the pitch. And it's endemic in the game from a low level, the sense that these young lads, they're focused so much on their football that they're not even given a decent ground in basic education. They're not even given a decent ground in how to exist in society. They're just in this bubble from the age of 13, 14 onwards. And that's a problem in itself. But that doesn't explain Gary Medine. At the end of the day, there's players out there, and we all know who they are. Gary Medine, if he wasn't so good at football, would have been in prison a long time ago, just because he's a bit of a knob. And so... It's unfortunate. I don't like the fact that it's happened at our club. I'm reasonably glad with the stance that Wednesday have taken, in that they made sure that Gary Medine wasn't going to continue to get paid as soon as that judgment came down against him. That was mentioned in court, wasn't it, that he had no income anymore. He couldn't afford to service his mortgage because the club wasn't paying him anymore. Personally, I would have liked a strong statement to come out of the club straight away, if only to set ourselves apart from that lot the other side of the city, who decided to quietly keep on paying Shed the Ripper, right up until the point where it became obvious that he wasn't getting out. I think it's been a sorry. It's a shame for the lad. It's a shame for his career. But I think that we just wash our hands of the whole thing. He's no longer a Sheffield Wednesday player. We don't have to wring our hands over it anymore. And there certainly aren't any campaigns to get him brought back. So that's for me. Job done. We move on with hopefully a new strike force.
Exactly. I echo it all. I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, Eddie, about the bit where you said that football is an industry where, regardless of what type of person you are, as long as you're scoring goals, it don't matter. You can be an absolute Bob Belland, but as long as you're scoring goals, it's fine. It's all right. Well, this is where managers like Bobby Robson, I think, are sorely missed, because I don't know if you've ever read his book, but he talks about Craig Bellamy, and he said Craig Bellamy is one of the most gifted footballers I've ever had the fortune to manage, and but every other word out of his mouth was F this and F that and C this, and it sounds like he's talking about me, but he's talking about Craig Bellamy, and I think that's, there are one or two managers who will sign somebody on their attitude as well. Their attitude is a part of signing, and there are a couple that don't. I think there was Billy Davies actually might be one, but I unfortunately I think that Dave Jones doesn't give two chuffs about what they're like as a person, as long as because like we've talked about before, he's not a sentimental guy, he's not a personable guy, he just wants to win, and I don't think he'd care of what type of person somebody is. Having said that, I agree with you again, Eddie, about the way that the club took the stance. Do you know what I mean? I think the club would handle it very well, and like you say, he's done, he's dusted, and I think we spoke about it before all this came about what a knob Gary Medine is, and I said, and I think we said that his Twitter presence is kind of makes me dislike him more. And then, do you know what I mean? I started to dislike him after seeing him on Twitter, and then all of this was typified by two things for me: the photos of his family that he tweeted when he went home once, and the fact he turned up for court in a hoodie. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one of the things that were thrown back at me when I were having a heated discussion with people online was, he's young, he's made a mistake. Well, that's fine. I accept that. We all make mistakes. Jesus, I've made some right mistakes. And when I was his age, I was as big a tool as he is, probably.
Yeah.
Some people say that I still am, and I've kept that mantle going. But
I'm proud of you, Beast. Keep it going, brother.
Cheers. But the thing is, most of us tend to learn from those mistakes, and he has had plenty of opportunity to learn from it, and he's chosen to ignore that. Now, if you're going to ignore it and carry on behaving like a knob, then you are going to get found out eventually, and eventually you're going to end up where he is.
I love that. I love that we've all said that. Gary Medine, knob. Yeah, that's it.
So that's a massive
Right.
majority vote then.
At the risk of sounding like I want to bring order to proceedings, let's talk about football.
That's a jolly good idea for Joe. That's a jolly good idea.
Football. Nothing's happened recently for us, has it?
Which was some 1-1 draws, apparently.
What about that 1-1 draw against? It was a 5-0 drubbing that we gave Doncaster.
Yeah.
But when I look at the results here, it says that we lost 1-0. How can that be right? Because I was at that game, and we absolutely banjoed them. So how can that be right? Is that a typo?
Unfortunately not, old chap. It was a very harsh game, shall we say. But again, moving on from that, we've got October to look forward to, and we'll whip through them all, chaps. Of course, October consisted of 1-1 draws the whole way through: Brighton, Ipswich, Bolton and Barnsley. And it's fair to say, chaps, that Mr. Jones felt rather hard done by a lot of these games. Again, looking at decisions made regarding handballs in penalty boxes and disallowed goals that shouldn't have been disallowed and things like that, I can see where he's coming from. I mean, obviously we do see managers moaning and whining about decisions, but even the pundits on the Football League show were starting to show a little bit of sympathy for the Wednesday and Dave Jones' plight with some of the decisions. Is that something we can look at using as an excuse, if you like, chaps, or should we just mull at these teams anyway?
Doesn't that say everything, though, that when the Football League show are saying, actually, Wednesday have been unlucky there, then you know that we've been absolutely robbed blind, because they give us, even if Keith Edwards was commentating on us, we'd still get more out of him than we do out of Steve Barrett. So, look, on the face of it, they are two fairly creditable away draws, a very disappointing home draw, and a toss-up in a local derby that probably could have gone either way. So I've struggled to be too disappointed that we haven't picked up more points. What I would say is those 4 games, I think, laid the foundations for 2 things. Number one, it made it abundantly clear what we were missing as a team, which was someone who could put the ball in the back of the net. Hence Matty Fryer and hence Connor Wickham in the last in recent days. The other very important thing that I think it brought was that team came through bad luck and adversity and feeling really hard done by. And I think it did an awful lot to repair a very, very shaky team spirit. We were talking, weren't we, in the run-up to those games, or the last time we were talking about, there's a bit of discontent, not only between, the fans and the players on the pitch, but also, you had JJ throwing tantrums at full time and when he was getting taken off. And it looked like there might be a bit of a divide in the camp, and it was a very worrying time, because as soon as you start seeing that, you kind of hark back to, the late 90s and the sort of mess that we had there in terms of personalities at the club not getting on. But I think those 4 games, because I think we can feel justifiably robbed of some points out of those games, I think it's actually brought the team together. And one of the most important aspects that I saw at Barnsley, but specifically last Saturday against Reading, you've got a team there that are playing for each other and that really want to win and want to prove that that league position is a false one. So, yeah, only 4 points out of it, but the long-term benefit of that run might be felt for the next 12 games.
Hang on a minute, Eddie. One of the criticisms that everybody is throwing at Dave Jones is that I know it's a a nice comfort blanket for everybody when things aren't going how they want it to go. But they always trot out, first things first, is he's lost the dressing room, right? And that was one of the things that were thrown at him, probably before those 4 draws. He's lost the dressing room. The players aren't playing for each other. They're playing as individuals. Now, I happen to agree with you that, as far as I'm concerned, they have been playing as a team. We just haven't been getting the rub of the green at times. And in those 4 games, all right, we were definitely unlucky to lose at Brighton. It was the last minute. The Ipswich game, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the dullest games that I've ever seen. Yeah, it was just so dreadful. I honestly don't know how both teams scored a goal in that game, because it looked like everybody were trying to just avoid being there. It was horrible. And when you contrast that with the following game away at Bolton, that to me was the turnaround in everything that we saw on Saturday stemmed from that game for me, because I thought we played good football. We took the game to Bolton, and we were most definitely unlucky not to win that game, because we were by far the best side of the 2. And you bear in mind that Bolton have got probably 2 of the best wingers in this division. They've got Chris Eagles on one side and that young lad Feeney on other one. Yeah. And they're absolutely belting players at this standard. But they were both substituted midway through the second half because we were getting nowhere. We had them tucked up in our pockets. Even Raider had them tucked away. And that shows you how well we were playing. But then, to go to Barnsley, and again, whenever we're on telly, you always get a million armchair critics, don't you? Yeah. And all right, that first hour were pretty awful. In fact, the first half was as bad as we've seen for a long, long while. But when Dave Jones changed it round on the hour mark, that game were ours from that moment on, as far as I'm concerned. It was a different team, different mindset, and we're probably unlucky not to win the game in that last half an hour, although it would have been a bit unfair on the Dingles, however hard that is to say, but it would have been. And then it brought us on to Reading, where everything came together.
Well, I'll tell you what as well. Christ, you don't want to get carried away, but how much last year would we have taken a 5-game unbeaten streak?
Yeah, true enough. And I think it was Paul Sturrock that said, draw your away games and win your home games. Well, 3 of them 4 games were draws away from home. So yeah. You've got to be happy with that. So if you're looking at that, the only disappointment is the draw against Ipswich at home. Which, as I said, was the dullest game ever.
I think we do need to win those home games. You're right. I think maybe a lot of that bad feeling, such as, and you're right, Beast, that whenever we're on telly, suddenly everyone's informed about the state of the team, and they all think they know what they're talking about, etc. But if you actually look back, even as far as August, we haven't had those tough games at home. Millwall at home, we could only get a draw. Yeovil at home, and that a terrible performance and a 1-1 draw. And then losing at home to Donny, yeah, we battered them, but you come away with no points. You feel very flat. I think that what we actually need to do is win some of those home games. I'd take some defeats on the road. I'm never upset when we lose on the road if we've had our backs to the wall and a home team is forced to win. I never have a problem with that. It's just the way that football goes. But we really do need to put in performances like Saturday on a consistent basis, because we've had a swing of very, very winnable home games that we haven't won. So we need to start turning some of those ones that we thought were potentially pretty tough, like Reading at home, and turn those into wins. And you see suddenly the impact that winning well against a good team has. It's amazing.
Well, there you are, folks. There's a Wednesday week exclusive. Eddie says we need to win games. I tell you what, I don't know. I haven't thought of that before.
It's easy enough. It's football malarkey, isn't it?
We need to get going on the phone now. I'll get him to tell, because he probably hasn't put it out yet.
So let's have a little look at this Reading game then. Obviously, chaps, it was somewhat of a turning point of this season. It cheered us all up a little bit. Obviously, now we've trounced Reading. We're clearly going to get promoted to the Premiership this season, so we don't have to worry about that anymore. But I mean, fair enough. We've spoken about the strikers that will come in, but we've had a few other. And one of the big differences for me, I know he was playing his old club, was Antonio. Who really.
This is it. I was going to say exactly the same, Lord H. Sorry to cut you off there.
No, that's quite all right, old chap.
But I thought, where's this Mikel Antonio been all season? Like, all right, he's turned up. We've had the odd flash, but he absolutely bossed the bloody game. He was everywhere, and you kind of think, well, what, because it's your old team, all of a sudden you're pulling out the bag. Surely he should be playing like that every week. Yes, it was nice for him to play well, but I kind of think, well, where's this guy been? I was a bit annoyed by it. Do you know what I mean?
It's only for us you can get annoyed by a player playing well.
I'll tell you what the difference was. The difference was that we had those two up front. That we had Matty Fryer, who, in my opinion, has been a breath of fresh air through this side since he arrived. I mean, I loved him as a young player when he was at Leicester. I thought we all watched him burst onto the scene. We thought, blimey, this lad is going to be great. And then things didn't go to plan. He got a few injuries, and now, fortunately, he's landed on our doorstep. And I can't tell you how good that is to see. He's just fantastic. Add to that, Connor Wickham, who is 7 years younger than him, as big as a chuffing house. Have you seen the size of him? I mean, he has bulked up so much since he was here with us last. He is just a beast. And them two, as soon as they took onto that pitch against Reading, it was as if they'd played together for years. There was just an instant connection with them, and you don't see that very often. And I hope it's going to continue for the rest of the games. But those two playing how they did freed up plenty of space, time, and gave the ball out to Antonio a lot more than he would normally have had. And it was just wonderful to see. It gave Antonio a lift. Plus, go on, sorry.
You know, the other player, I absolutely agree with you. I think those two up front changed the entire option available to the rest of the team. So suddenly Antonio could play with that freedom. Elan down the other side could play with that freedom. But the player who I thought absolutely shone was Stephen McPhail, because suddenly you could almost see his eyes lighting up like, well, hang on a minute. Suddenly I can bring everything that I've got and use the ball in ways that are going to bring real benefit to the team, because there's players making the right runs, players finding themselves in the right positions. And I know that if I play a pass, it's going to, create something interesting, rather than me just being, effectively a water carrier who's desperately trying to keep possession in midfield, to kind of stem an on-rushing tide of an opposition. Suddenly, he looked like he had every option under the sun to do something with and be creative with. I thought he was brilliant on Saturday.
It was brilliant. And like Matty Fryer, since he's arrived at the club, he has been outstanding, in my opinion. He's been just what we've needed in that midfield. I was hoping that he was going to forge a good partnership with Semedo, because when Semedo came, I mean, I've given Semedo some right stick. I didn't think he would up to this standard. But since he's got back into the side, I think he's worked hard, and he's starting to prove that he is up to this standard. It's just unfortunate that the red card has stopped him in his tracks. Now, Olifanjana took over from him, and again, in his first game, he was a little bit rusty, but in that last game, he grew into the game. And him and McPhail were working so well in the heart of that midfield. It was fantastic to see.
I was a big fan of what I saw in terms of confidence as well from our strike partnership. What was it? Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi. I think it's the confidence. I think there's a couple of goals that from Saturday that just saw confidence. I think there's one. I think it's Wickham's, where the keeper's coming out to absolutely nail him. And Wickham kind of just taps it, toe pokes it past him. It might have been the fourth or the fifth.
It was Fryer.
The last one.
Was it Fryer? The last one. I love that goal. I just thought there was no urgency around doing whatsoever, and the confidence in which he just poked it in. I thought that is a confident striker. That is not a striker for a team that are struggling to fight relegation this year. Do you know what I mean? And I think, like you said, we've got some quality players. We know that Helan and Antonio can be devastating on their day, but because they've been pulling for a fat Derby County reserve in Chris Maguire, and they've been having to sweep around this and cover for that. And, do you know what I mean? We haven't got the best out of them because they've been doing the job of two people. And to watch them play like they can was so exhilarating. I remember I'd forgotten what it felt like to win, and I forgot what it felt like to drub somebody, because I can't remember the last time we absolutely kicked the crap out of somebody. And I loved it. I genuinely enjoyed it. Like I loved that they got two. I was annoyed that they got their penalty. I was like, ugh. Well,
yeah, what a bit annoying.
Yeah, even though we've won by 3 clear goals, I'm still a bit annoyed. And I don't think. I mean, look at the Hull game from last year where we beat them 3-2. That was a good game. That was an entertaining game to watch. This one was a pure, unadulterated, absolute backdoor smashing. And I haven't seen that in years. Do you know what I mean?
It was a jizz fest.
Jizz fest. It was a fruit bag explosion.
Definitely. I'll tell you now, my fruit bag went all over the place. But there's 2 words to describe that finish of Matty Fryatt for that 5th goal: class. That's exactly what it was.
What are we talking about? Ill-educated footballers.
2 words: classer. Right, hang on a minute. If Fudge can say exhilarating, then I'm having that. You're absolutely right about that finish, Fudge, and he created that time himself, and that is experience and confidence in his own ability. And you stick, I don't know, even Antonio or definitely JJ in that same situation, and that's in Rosehead at Cop, isn't it?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's one of the biggest things, because not only did the actual players seem to be having that bit of confidence again, the fans. I mean, when that for the first goal, Antonio lays it back. Now it's practically an open net for Fryatt, and no Wednesday fan at all made a single noise until that ball went in the net, because we were all expecting it not just to go into the stands, but over the stands and land in the bloody river. And again, when and the volley there with Wickham at the end, I mean, that just sits up perfectly. And we've all done that on the football pitch, and we all know that sits up wonderfully. But we all know when it happens with a Wednesday player, everybody in the stand doesn't go, they start covering their heads because they don't want to be hit by the ball when it whizzes past the goal.
There's a pause now. Whenever we score, there's a pause, and 20,000 pairs of eyes all look at the linesman before we celebrate, because until we know the flag ain't going up, until we know the referee ain't allowing it for something, nobody does anything.
It's like we're like rabbits caught in the headlight. We're just a little bit confused for a second, and we're like, "Is this? Lovely."
I love that we're likening Wednesday fans to a late 1930s businessman whose interests are going to be affected by the war. Do you know what I mean? And they just go, "I'm sorry, sir, the Germans have invaded Poland." And he goes, "What? What? What's this?"
By the time the 5th one went in, there wasn't so much a roar from everybody in ground. It was just a collective.
Huh? Exactly, absolutely.
Sound like Scooby-Doo in Nicam surround stereo.
Again, following the match on Twitter, the entire timeline of Twitter was, "Is this a dream? What's happening? Am I watching the wrong game?" It was just. I must admit, chaps, I was on that side as well. I was utterly confused. I didn't understand. It was.
Well, if you look at, I've got the stats in front of me, and Reading still had 54% of the possession, right? But we had 18 shots to their 15, and 7 of ours were on target to their 3. Now, to dismiss Reading as you know that we were miles better than them would be wrong, because Absolutely. They are still a quality side, and maybe it's because they're such a quality side and played with such freedom that it allowed us a little bit of extra time and space as well. They looked absolutely wonderful going forward, and that number 7, that Russian lad of theirs, oh my word, he was just easily the best player on the pitch by a country mile. What's he on, 60 grand a week or something like that?
Absolutely.
And you know, you can see that he's head and shoulders above everybody else. Going forward, they look like they could score every time they went forward. Fortunately for us, our defence were just full of it. They managed to throw themselves in front, and there was a point where the ball were being battered in our box, and they were throwing themselves at it. Zayati and Raider literally throwing themselves on the floor to get in the way of the ball, and it was fantastic to see. And we hadn't seen anything like that for such a long time. Fortunately for us, Reading were just dreadful at the back. And towards the end, I saw their number 5. We were pressing again to get a 6th goal. And how good does that sound?
Yeah.
Pressing to get a 6th goal. And I saw their number 5, he just ran over, and he had a little bit of time. And he could have just booted it upfield, and instead he just hoofed it into the south stand. And they were all shouting at him, all his teammates. And he just walked back and dropped his shoulders, and he just shrugged. And this huge harumph came from him right in front of him. He just went, it was like he wanted to be anywhere but there. And it was like he was saying, what the hell happened? Where did it go wrong? We're Reading, who have up to that point conceded less than a goal a game. So it must have been a real shell shock for them. And it was just a game to savour and enjoy every last drop of it. It was wonderful to be there. That's it, I'm out.
I tell you what, I'm gonna just last thing then on Reading and the prior games before we talk about Eddie's career shift. The Johnson at the back, not that Johnson, the other Johnson, the back Johnson, defender Johnson.
Yeah.
Rog.
Not R Johnson, the other R Johnson. How's he getting on? What do you reckon?
Well,
I think he gets better every game for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love him. I'm now gay for him. Sorry, Miguel.
Too late. My woman's already spoken for him. She is all over him, and since McPhail took his shirt off as he left the pitch, she's now all over him. She had one of those peculiar moments that young ladies have when he took his shirt off at Bolton away and walked towards us, and she saw his fine athletic body, which, I mean, she's got used to it because her dad's got one as well. Oh, whoever
You ever met him?
I mean, shut up. As he's walking towards us, shirtless, I heard her go, it was like a
God.
proper 1970s sitcom moment. I looked at her, I thought, when did you get to the stage where you grew up to be going, aren't you still 8? Apparently not. So she's got this thing now for Big Rog, which she loves the name Roger Johnson. And she's on Roger Johnson and McPhail now, so I'm sorry, Fudge, you can't have him.
Of mine. Me and my Hispanic boy.
You've got to stick to la. But I agree with Eddie. He's got better every game, and again, he's another one of these quality players. To Dave Jones' credit, because we need to give our beleaguered manager a little bit of credit, because it seems to me that he gets very little from a large proportion of our fans, but he is working to really, really tight constraints on the money, but he is managing to bring in players, albeit on loan, that I don't think many other managers would be able to bring in for us. He certainly nobody else could have got Roger Johnson to our club, I don't think.
I genuinely 100% agree with you. I think if I had a concern about the signings we make, like Leroy Lita, cracking signing, Wi-Fi, cracking signings themselves, Johnson again, and the only problem is they're not here for long enough. And I know, like you say, we've got tight budget constraints. My first thought is, do you know what, Milan? You sold Leicester City for 40 million quid. Right.
Well, if he sold them for 40 million quid, why is he getting a loan then?
Why are we getting a loan? Why? Do you know? I don't understand. Yeah, right. Hang on. We were 30 million in debt, right? So
that leaves
10. Yeah. And now
you see me and you, Fudge. We are businessmen.
Do you know what I mean?
We know how commerce works. He had 40 million.
I tell you what, he's got 40 million there, and we were 30 million in debt. So as far as we're in the black by 10 mil. Yeah.
No cost 800 grand. We'll call it $1 million. So he's still got 9 million left.
Yeah.
Did we not lose 2 million last season, chaps?
Well,
this is what we're talking about people not liking reading. It take a lot of reading to find out that you've got no idea what you're talking about. You should probably stop.
Our fans are spending the money. We're putting the money into the club. We're buying silly mugs with Dave Jones and Milan Mandric's face on. Do you know what I mean?
And key rings with me on.
And key rings with Beastie.
That's where it's all gone wrong, chaps. That's how it...
Are you on a key ring?
Yes, I'm on a key ring, a passport holder, a flask.
Oh, a mobile phone cover.
Mobile phone cover, yes, well remembered. All sorts of stuff.
Are you on that? I was on the website the other day having a look at crap to buy. I bought a scarf, but
excuse me.
You on that picture of the crowd that they're using to?
That's correct. Yes.
I should. That was in the.
We've sorted it, chaps. We've realised why we're in financial ruin. It's because Beastie's on all the bloody merchandise. Nobody's buying anything. But to be fair, I think that these days, when it comes to football, a lot of the revenue isn't generated by the fans anymore, is it?
And I've got to ask the question: where is it all bloody going?
Right. Well, obviously, me and you have got a firm grip on reality, Fudge. We know business.
We know.
Back of our hands. And if we're only getting players in on loan, which are obviously free,
obviously,
right, so we're just borrowing them, right? Eddie, please explain to us where we are going wrong with our thinking.
You know what, lads? You've given an absolutely sterling summary of. I'd say, in all honesty, and this is no criticism of anybody. The vast majority of Wednesday fans who don't immerse themselves in things like the business of the club, that they're completely reasonable aspersions to make. Completely reasonable ideas to have about how it's worked with the club. So
actually, that me and B suggested then. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lot of Wednesday fans that genuinely believe that.
Oh, true.
Do that maths.
Yeah, absolutely.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Again, it is simplistic and it is incorrect, but it's completely understandable. Now, the reality of the situation is that Milan Mandaric is in for about £20 million so far since buying us. It cost him around about £8 million to buy the debt off the co-op. So we're £30 million in debt. Milan put around about £6-7 million on the table and said, right, co-op, I will buy that debt off you. So it's not owed to you anymore. It's owed to me, Milan Mandaric. Fine, the co-op were happy with that. They wrote that debt off and sold it to Milan. Milan then needed to throw a few fishes out to the likes of our erstwhile chairman, Mr. Allen, and also various of the loan note holders, and he had to pay off a tax bill. So, there was about £8 million that needed to be spent. And at that point, we still had a £30 million debt, but we owed it to Milan. The first thing Milan did, once he got in there, was to convert that debt into equity. So what he basically said was, right now, I don't own the club, but I can call in the debts on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write off that £30 million, and in return, I want 100% of the shares. So there is now a nominal £1,000 worth of shares, and he owns all of it, or his trust owns all of it. Fantastic. At that point, we're debt-free. We've got one owner, and Wednesday I don't have any shares. The Shareholders Association members don't have any shares. Dave Allen, the loan note holders, none of them have any shares. The only people that have shares is Milan Mandaric. And suddenly, it's his responsibility to make sure the club operates as a going concern. The problem that there is with Sheffield Wednesday, and we are not rare in the world of football. In fact, you can look at the sort of financial operations and the losses that are being made by our peers in the Championship, and it would keep me up at night if I was a fan of those clubs. Sheffield Wednesday, fundamentally, at the moment, is not a profit-making business. We lose money, not a lot of money in the scheme of things, but in the region of £1 to £2 million a year, based on the fact that we have got a big stadium with high running costs. We don't perform particularly well commercially, so that's banqueting suite stuff, that's on the concourses, food and drink, that's in the Owls Mega Store. We don't make enough money through our commercial activities and through our gate receipts to make it a fundamentally profit-making business. Once you get to that point, then you can start to speculate. So Milan for the first couple of years, the first year or so of his tenure, was putting in money from his own pocket, effectively out of the family trust. If you imagine Milan walking into a casino and he's got £40 million in his back pocket, or however much it is, he's got an amount that he can spend, and when that money's gone, it's gone. I think that he was maybe a little bit naive, or he didn't have the time to do the due diligence needed. I think he thought that he could make the club a profitable enterprise quickly and cheaply. And I think he's discovered that that's not quite the case. A lot of that is down to the fact that we've struggled at the bottom end of the Championship, and that has an impact on gate receipts, and it has an impact on the commercial activities of the club. But the underlying message is that Sheffield Wednesday still needs money from somewhere to keep on operating. It's not a desperate situation, but it's something that we need to be aware of. And that won't change until either we push up the league and we're getting 25, 30,000 in the stadium week in, week out, or until we get outside investment from somebody else who's going to take on the role that Milan has had, which is trying to push the club forward and making it profitable and eventually get some money out of it by selling it on for more than he paid for it.
So are you saying that Milan essentially now has closed the purse strings?
Again, this is purely conjecture. My view is that, like a man walking into a casino that has no ATM card, he can't get any more out when he's spent it. I think that Milan or Milan's trust and the trustees of that trust have said, that's it. There's an amount of money that you can spend, and we can't go any higher than that. And it's probably more than Milan thought would be required. He thought that he'd be able to spend that money and get more, get more for it, get more bang for the buck, better on-field performance and better commercial performance. Buying Sheffield Wednesday for £8 million was a brilliant punt by Milan Mandaric. And almost as an aside, it saved the club in terms of it made us debt-free for a while. But what it didn't do was fix the underlying issue with the club, which is we're a typical football club. We don't make money. We're an awful lot better than most because we lose an awful lot less than most. But in order for Sheffield Wednesday to wipe its own face, it needs to be at the very least a top 6 Championship club that is getting 25,000, maybe even touching 30,000 as an average attendance, which I think is reasonable. I think we probably would if we were on a real promotion charge. And then, of course, the big out for Milan Mandaric coming in is if he can somehow get us into the Premier League, suddenly the amount of money that he's had to put in to get that £80 million a season out, and potentially, you can sell Sheffield Wednesday on day one in the Premier League for north of 100 million, with a decent playing squad and decent finances. It makes an awful lot of sense for Milan to do that. And I think what we're seeing now, and I know a lot of fans are now aware that there's a charge on the ground. So a year ago, Milan, or the club, took a loan of £2 million in part from Paul Aldridge, the chief executive, and that was secured against the ground. Again, that's nothing too unusual in business. If people are going to lend you money, they generally want security to make sure that you're going to pay it back. So we had a £2 million loan, which was intended to be short term. We were certainly told that it was short term to cover kind of cash flow. And then recently, in the last month, we've had another £1.5 million, again, secured on the stadium. I think my reading of the situation is that is covering, in part, the ongoing small, low-level losses that the club makes. But also, I think it's financing something that Milan knows he has to do if he's not going to get lost in a vicious circle. He has to strengthen on the pitch because he's never going to get any investor coming in to give him a return on his investment if we are in danger of dropping to League One. And and we do need to stay out of League One because a very small loss of £1 million or £2 million in the Championship, you can add £5 million a year to that in League One, and very, very soon we're back to very, very dark days that we've had. Now that would happen whether Milan was in charge or anybody else, but Milan, I think, has made a calculated risk here in that he's taken an extra £1.5 million out as a loan, this time from Terry Brown, a chap who was fairly recently at West Ham as an exec there. He's taken this loan out. I think he's used some of it to prop up the ongoing operations of the club, it's concerning, but it's not unusual. And I think he's used some of it to get the likes of Matty Fryer and Olafin, these chaps that have come in that have actually materially improved what we've got happening on the pitch. And suddenly, if we can put together a run that sees us comfortably in the top half, I think
More
Milan
bumps.
starts looking a lot more secure, and it looks like a decent gamble, because then suddenly you've got people knocking on the door again looking to take the club forward. Now, it ain't going to be Premier League money at that point, but it's certainly going to be enough to justify the £20 million or so that Milan has put in himself, and give him a small return on his investment. At which point, then, I don't think we're in a bad situation.
So how likely do you think? Because a lot of Wednesday fans are going to be asking this now. When we get players in on loan and they do so well for us, how likely do you think it is that we are going to be able to keep one or two of the players that we bring in?
Look,
I'm not talking about Connor Wickham, because you're going to be talking ridiculous money, but somebody like Matty Fryatt, who is surplus to requirements. A lot of Wednesday fans are going to look at him and say, well, why aren't we putting in a bid for him? Why aren't we making him ours?
I'm going to be honest with you here. I think with a Matty Fryatt, I don't see any real upside in us taking him permanently at this point. I think that he's so surplus to requirements at Hull. I know things have changed recently at Hull with injuries, but I still don't see Matty Fryatt as being recalled back there. I think with a Matty Fryatt, I think we're quite justified in taking him till January and then trying to get him, for the rest of the season, like we did with Elan and like we did with Antonio in the first instance.
Yeah, but the problem with that, Eddie, is that he bangs the goals in for us, and then in January, somebody with money at the top of the table looks at him and says, "That's the guy for us," and then we're left out in the cold, aren't we?
No, you're right. Yeah, look, at some point, if we all of these are calculated risks, aren't they? At some point, if we think that it's worth doing, then yeah, we might get him for a small amount. But strikers, and we know as well as anybody, strikers can have 4, 5, 6, even a dozen good games and then never score again. And we're not in a position to be offering long-term deals or competitive wages deals to players right now. So I take your point. To an extent, I do agree with it. But with a Matty Fryatt, I don't think there's as much of a worry there. I think with a Connor Wickham, that just like Ross Barkley last year, that is a huge coup for Dave Jones. It's a huge step up in terms of the calibre. And I don't think we'll ever get players like that for more than a couple of months guaranteed. So
no, but the point with the Connor Wickham is, and again, I'm trying to defend Dave Jones against the brickbats that have been thrown at him. It seems incessantly to me, and a lot of, all right, some of it's sound. I can understand some of it. But a lot of it is unfair, in my opinion. But Connor Wickham would not have come here without Dave Jones being there, because he had offers from clubs at the top of this division. But he chose to come here because he's got a lot of respect. Him and his father, by all accounts, they've got a lot of respect and time for Dave Jones and our club. Now, that's the same for Roger Johnson. Again, I don't expect us to get Roger Johnson on a permanent, because we just can't afford the sort of money that he's earning at Wolves. But Roger Johnson would not have come here without Dave Jones. Matty Fryatt, maybe that's the same. Maybe he likes the reputation that Dave Jones has built up. But he's the sort of player that I would certainly like to see at the club, and a lot of Wednesday fans would like to see at the club permanently, because the real downside is that he leaves for one of our rivals in January. We don't score goals, and they do, and that drops us right back in the smelly stuff again.
It's a fair point.
I've got a question. Why, for the best part of 2 years, we've been doing this show and talking absolute crap and nonsense, when Eddie's this fountain of knowledge at the finances behind the club? Why did we not?
You know why? Because we actually quite like having listeners. And
is that what it is?
If we talked about this stuff more than once a year, then we would be hemorrhaging the very small band of followers that we do have. So, I think we've made a smart move.
Smashing. Well, Eddie, thanks for that. That actually explains it all to me. So, just to recap then, he sold Leicester for 40 million. Bought us for 30, so there's 10 left. Is that what we're saying?
No,
I think we're all agreed on that, aren't we?
I was going to say, sure, that's the maths.
Yeah, I think that's put to bed now. Eddie's on our side.
Was there any point in the last 15 minutes?
What last 15 minutes?
Yeah.
For my breakfast.
Now listen, I don't want to make this the Eddie show. I'm not talking about you gents there. I'm quite happy to let you boys hold forth on any topic whatsoever. I know you're happy to give me the latitude to do the same. I think it's important because I'm fairly high profile in terms of talking about these things on the forums and all of this sort of stuff. And until very recently, I've been a Wednesday night director. So I think it's important to put a counter view there, which is that there are some fans that worry that the debts that are accruing on our club, specifically those that are secured against Hillsborough as a stadium, it opens the door to us losing our ground and being, kind of in a sale and leaseback situation, which has caused real horrible problems for the likes of Coventry, for the likes of Leeds in the past. And so,
okay. So are those worries justified then, Eddie?
I think as if you wanted to paint a doomsday scenario, a worst case scenario, then yeah, absolutely, they're warranted and it could happen. My view is that it's much more likely to happen, and in fact, I'd probably say it is likely to happen were we to get relegated, because I can't see any other way that Sheffield Wednesday could kind of make good on those debts to the people who have lent us that money. Is it a permanent thing? Not necessarily. Leeds bought their ground back after it was sold later on. It's something that we need to be concerned about. But my view, and this is why I'm not trumpeting it from the rooftops and wringing my hands over it, is that it hurts Milan Mandaric as much as it would hurt us as fans, and it would hurt Sheffield Wednesday as a club, because every asset that goes out of the big egg basket of everything that Milan Mandaric owns, Sheffield Wednesday is not worth as much if they don't own Hillsborough. Sheffield Wednesday is not worth as much if we owe £3.5 million. Sheffield Wednesday is not worth as much if we don't have any decent saleable players. So it's in Milan Mandaric's interest to ensure that whereas we look as good an opportunity as possible for someone to buy it off him and for him to make a profit. And realistically, if Milan Mandaric is at a position where he's willing to say, okay, the only way I'm going to get my money back is by selling the ground and leasing it back and creaming off £500,000 or £1 million a year in rent, then he's lost out as much as anybody else, and he's failed in his task, and it makes him it makes it look like a very, very bad deal for him. And frankly, if that happened, I think we'd have much bigger problems than worrying about whether we own our ground or not. We'd have problems that are, can this club ever get back to where it needs to be, or are we going to be forever stuck in League One? Right, and that would be more of a worry to me than anything that happens on the business side.
Right. Well, you've touched on it there, but I think you need to explain to people why you've resigned from Wednesday night this week, because all this has come at the same time. The stuff about the loans, and fans are worried about that uncertainty, and then both you and Nigel resigned from Wednesday night round about the same time. So it kind of looks like you're jumping ship because of all the things that are involved with that. Now, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm not just saying this because you're here, I was a skeptic about Wednesday. I was part of the old trust. I was a member of the old trust, but the way things went at the end of that really ticked me off a lot. And that was it. As far as I was concerned, I didn't want anything more to do with fans groups or trusts or anything like that. And it took a long time for the likes of yourself and Nigel and everybody else that works at Wednesday night to build that trust back up. I'm not on about the trust itself. I'm on about the trust of fans, especially from me. Right? And I remained skeptical for such a long time. But when you see the enthusiasm and the drive that such as yourself and Nigel and everybody else has had for this, and the enthusiasm, it's hard not to be drawn back in. And I have been drawn back in, and I have. I've seen the smile tickets put to great use. I've seen that firsthand. I've actually collected them from Wednesday night and handed them out myself. So I know how good that is. It's an absolutely fantastic project. I've been on the supporters buses. I know how fantastic that is. And I know how much work you've all put into that. And I know how much time both of you two have given freely to this. So to see two people who I think command a lot of respect from fans, and deservedly so, walk away from something that you put that much time and effort into, it's got to raise alarm bells. So tell us why, honestly and openly, why you've done that.
Firstly, thanks for your kind words, Beastie. It's been a long time that we have wanted and needed to change the perception that the fans have about Wednesday night. Not because of Wednesday night, not because we need to be loved, but because if fans can see the positives that the supporters group can bring, then we can do more. We raise more money for Smile tickets. We can put on bigger events. We can run more coaches to away games, that kind of thing. So I joined Wednesday night at a time where it was a very political organisation, and I did it in part because there was a fight to be fought. I feared for the future of the club, and I wanted to throw what talent and knowledge and experience I had into helping navigate us through that and doing what we could to kind of protect those interests that the fans had. Milan coming on the scene changed that completely, and overnight it became very, very apparent that what we actually needed in this new, non-political single owner period of time was a fan club that could rebuild a very divided, broken fan base. There was a period where fans were fighting against fans as well as fighting against the club. And what we needed to do was to try and get back to a point where Sheffield Wednesday fans, spoke with one voice as a general thing. And the only way to do that was by being completely non-political. Yeah. So it was around the same time that Nigel came on board as chair, and I think he and I very much shared that vision. In fact, in the summer of 2011, I spent a lot of time actually putting together effectively a PowerPoint presentation. I know that sounds terribly dull. It was not intended to be terribly dull. It was intended to be a vision for what a fan club could be, a fans group could be and could do, and what the benefits it would bring, not only for the fans by making it just more fun to be a Wednesday night and have more services that they could call upon to make it easier and better and more fun to be a fan of the club, but also the community, because Sheffield Wednesday have done a great deal of damage to its community as well, in part through having lack of money to put in there. There's a fantastic community programme at Sheffield Wednesday, and we at Wednesday kind of wanted to help that effort to try and reach out to new fans, to bring them into the fold, but also to build links with the community and become a real key part of this part of Sheffield. Fantastic. And then finally, we wanted to help benefit the club, because we were aware that there was this commercial issue with the club, that we weren't making as much money out of our fan base as certainly the likes of Leeds, for instance. And so we thought that by kind of bringing the fans together and helping the club offer more to the fans, it could actually help drive the club commercially, which of course has benefits in terms of being able to put more pounds on the pitch. So this vision was something that I think we as a board all agreed on, and it was our stated aim to follow it, and we did. I think the Smile tickets have gone from strength to strength. We've never done more away coaches. We've got a pre-match lounge, which is brilliant. All of these things have really, really been a lot of fun to do and have brought real benefit, and I think done a lot to change the perception of what a fans group does and what a fans group is there for. Recently, in the past few weeks, because of what's been happening kind of behind the scenes at the club in terms of loans being taken out and loans not then being repaid, a few faces started popping up again. People who had been very, very active during what I'd call the bad times. People with axes to grind, people with agendas, and some people who, yes, tried to lobby and agitate and try and change the remit of Wednesday night to being something political again. There was some fairly nasty public spats that happened. and it culminated in an official complaint being raised, first to the society itself, to Wednesday, and then to Supporters Direct, who are our umbrella organisation that the fans' trusts are all members of. At the same time, there was quite a lot of dissent within the Wednesdayite board about how much, I suppose, focus to give the financial issues and what the likely end game was of those financial issues. I know we've just touched on my view and what probably the counter view is, etc. I can only speak personally. If you want to go on Wednesdayite.com, you can read statements from Nigel. You can also read my statement, although it's pretty much exactly what I'm saying here. I certainly felt that when I had an umbrella organisation who were saying that restating that our aim as a supporters trust was to try to increase the fans' influence and ownership of the club, that we were being told from up on high that we needed to get more political, which was against what I personally wanted to do and what our stated aim was. But also, I felt uncomfortable being at the front end as vice chair of an organisation where some of my fellow directors, as well as some of our members, I'm sure, didn't share the same vision as me. So it was with a great deal of regret and a great deal of soul searching beforehand that I felt that I had no option but to stand aside, if only to ensure that that stated aim, that stated objective that a supporters trust should have was still, was still able to be carried out. And that whether it's with me or not, I don't think that really matters. My view is that I've got an awful lot of energy and time to give to Sheffield Wednesday Football Club and to give to a supporters club, but I can't give that time when I have to be a political animal as well as being a kind of, I don't use the word positive because political isn't necessarily negative, but for doing all those services, the smile tickets, the community stuff, the fun stuff, the things that really push my buttons. So I'm going to be completely honest with you, and it's not something I've said to anyone outside my own family. I think I've got the energy to be a part of a supporters club, and I'd love it to be with the club itself and actually be something that we do in partnership. And I think there's an awful lot of fans out there that can really get into that idea, and that maybe will overcome one of the major problems that we had at Wednesday, which was people actually becoming doers as opposed to just supporters or readers. Not Reed Johnson. And so I've actually been glad that since Nigel and I announced our resignations, an awful lot of people seem to have thought, hang on a minute, I need to nail my colours to a mast here. I need to get involved. And I know that Wednesday I've had a lot of inquiries from people saying, what can I do? I know you've lost two of your major active members and active directors. What can I do to help? And I think that's brilliant. And equally, there's been a load of people who've contacted Nigel and me and have been on the forums and said, you know what, if there's a fan club in the offing that springs out of this, I want to be a part of it. So as far as I can see, it's sad for me personally, but I actually think it's turning a new chapter for the fans of Sheffield Wednesday, and it might end up being one of the greatest positives that we've had.
So out of the flames, then, Eddie, out of the flash, out of the quagmire, do you think that days might be numbered for Wednesday as a group, and a new supporters group might rise like a phoenix? Or
look, it depends. What I can say is, while there is still a will for an organisation to be there that wants to be a political organisation, and by that I mean wishing to ask questions of the club about finances, about politics, about this sort of stuff, and that still has an aspiration for the fans to own their football clubs, whether that's be 100% ownership, whether that be alongside kind of the German model of 51% of it being owned by the fans and 49% owned by businesses. Whatever way, I think it's important that there is an organisation. Do I think that it will be as popular as one that concentrates on stuff for the fans, fun things, positive things, services for the fans? No, I don't. If I'm honest, I think it's a very small minority that want to be involved in the nuts and bolts of the serious stuff of the club. I like to be informed about these things. I think every Wednesday fan should know what's going on. But personally, my time and my energy, I want to put that into the things that are gonna really benefit the fans of Sheffield Wednesday and just make it better to be a Wednesday fan. That we feel part of something bigger than just 20, 25,000 fans going into a stadium twice, once every couple of weeks in the season.
Yeah. Well, Eddie, I can't thank you enough for clearing that up, especially with all the maths and the nonsense of it. Next week, folks, we'll be discussing whether the war in Iraq was legal or not.
We have got a bit serious, haven't we? There.
We've got a bit serious. There wasn't enough nonsense, but to be honest, I think it's nice to have the serious every now and again. And I was a big fan of it. I was actually captivated by that, and and I'm sure that I echo the sentiments of Beastie and a lot of the other guys, and the work you've done for Wednesday night. For me, I had no idea what the point of a supporters club was, and it wasn't until I've met you and I've done more research on it. I didn't know what was the point of it. Do you know what I mean? But then I realised that it's exactly like you just alluded to. Then it makes a family of us more, and it makes us a lot more than, like you say, a collective of people going into our church and then every couple of weeks. It makes us more of a community than a cult. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think if we can level anything at Beastie, is that he's never been a cult.
he's a full-on cult. But have we still got Beastie? Is he still there?
Oh, it's disappointing. It's just me and me.
It's just me and you left. But I know Lord Hillsborough something to come around and sort his lordly windows. But listen, guys, if you manage to stay through that, I suggest you give another listen and go through it. I'd like to thank Beastie and Eddie. You can get all the Beastie on Twitter at Beastie_. Get on Lord Hillsborough at Lord. Hang on, it's not Lord, is it? It's L0RD_H or something ridiculous. You'll find him if you're tapping Lord Hillsborough. Eddie, you're still at Sausage Arms?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And even though I'm no longer a director of Wednesday, I'm still around. I'm still helping the organisation, volunteering, doing a lot of the things that I've been doing anyway. But yeah, if you've got any questions, if you want to know more about the state of the club's finances, anything like that, I'm happy to chat. So at Sausage Arms on Twitter. And yeah, we'll get through this together. I'm hoping there's a real bright new future for Wednesday fans. And you know what? And one more thing I'd like to say, I did allude to it. If you're a Wednesday fan and you're passionate about this club and you think that you've got something you can bring to a fan club or to the supporters, then get in touch. If it's Wednesday night, brilliant. Get in touch with Wednesday night. If you want to get in touch with me, it's the sort of thing that I can absolutely imagine happening in the next 6 to 12 months. There's a lot of talking to be done, but I would love for us to have a reborn supporters club that can really do the sort of things that we dream about for fans. Big events, big benefit. Big groups of away coaches, and yeah, let's get into it, pals.
Smashing. Rallying the troops, Eddie. I love it. Well, get hold of me on Twitter as well, at Dan Fudge. Eddie, once again, thanks a lot for clearing that up, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of supporters that'll thank you for it. And Beastie's right. Is he here?
I'd actually pressed my mute button on my microphone. I've been chomping away for ages.
I was going to say.
Why are they ignoring me? Look, I've come up with a great idea. I was listening to that, and I'm thinking, I know what this needs, and it would be perfect for when you're putting stuff in writing on the on Wednesday night board or sending out an email to keep people pinned. And the thing that shot into my mind was breasts.
Yes,
right?
breasts.
Breasts.
It does, to be fair.
If you put breasts every other paragraph, that's going to keep people reading or listening. I don't know how we're going to do it on radio or on podcast.
Is that a word, breasts, or actually just a picture of some breasts?
Just a picture of some breasts, and if we want something for the ladies, then you can have my breasts. And that way,
we might get through to talk about and away down at Brighton and not mention your nipples.
Well, exactly. There you go. And I think you would get more people tuning in and paying attention.
Right. So I hereby nominate Beastie as Communications Director for the new Sheffield Wednesday Supporters Club.
Excellent.
Yeah. Go to beastiesnipples.com. We'll be buying shares from Banbridge next week. You can buy them at £1,000 each.
I can see it now, a little enamel badge of my breasts. That woman who sells them just outside the gates, I think they'll fly off her board. Fly up. Can they have a pair of Beastie's breast flour?
Flower. Right, well, I'm going to shoot off because I've got work to go to. What about you, lads?
Well, I've just finished work, so I'm not going back.
And for legal reasons, we are recording this on an evening and/or weekend, and therefore I do not need to be working at all.
Exactly. So we're all covered then.
Right. Once again, folks, thanks for listening, and see you next time.
Bye-bye.